Hello and welcome to Fowl Plays, where we look at tales of tabletop tragedy that are sure to ruffle some feathers. I'm your host, BossGoose, and today we have a two-part story featuring a DM/player named Sam, whose sense of entitlement and lack of understanding leads to some uncomfortable moments between him, OP, and a few regulars at their local game shop, as he makes unreasonable demands and harsh criticisms. Before we get started though, it's time to go recruiting. Last time we were able to drink our competition under the table and walked away with a brand new ship. Now all we need to do is find a competent crew and we can embark on our journey to find our lost island. Asking around, you learn there are two captains in port willing to hire out their crews for the right price. One, a grizzled veteran of many a voyage who brings decades of experience, and the other, a hot-blooded rookie with a talent for navigation looking to make their name. So go ahead and choose who you like best, and we'll check those results in a week from now. That's right, no roll today. In an effort to mix up our little game and add a few more interactive spins, I want you all to vote on which captain we end up hiring. I'll be sure to take the choice into account as we play out our future journey, and both options have their ups and downs, so there's no wrong choice. However, if you want to hit that subscribe button anyway, then you'll still receive updates whenever new content is available on my channel, easy access to dozens of videos to keep you entertained for hours, and the undying love of your goosely overlord. But now, without any further delays, it's time to take your seats and wet your beaks as we dive on into today's tale. Part 1 of our story is titled, Sam, the DM who wanted to force me into handing my character sheet to someone else. This happened a couple of weeks ago. With several hobby stores reopening for smaller tournaments, I found a game which Sam admitted would last several sessions as a new book, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, was coming out, and he wanted to run something that was considered filler. I played a kobold character that I was really attached to. I really liked this character and found him to be enjoyable. This is because I developed a full backstory for him that I spent a while on. This was looking to be a fun time, and for the first few sessions I played, nothing went wrong. That was until Sam informs me that next week we'll be moving the game to his house, and that another player will be joining since the location was an hour more away. The hobby store itself was an hour to get to, so I didn't feel like driving an extra hour to play in a game. This happens. Sometimes things can change and complicate a game. However, Sam wants my character sheet, the kobold, so that he can give it to another player. First off, I spent time developing this character, so I tell Sam that I wasn't going to give them up. He gets annoyed and also aggressive because of this, and it sparks a brief argument about how I was going to delay things for the newcomer. I'm thankful for the store employee who sticks up for me and tells him that he wasn't entitled to the kobold. Sam gives me a look like I was in the wrong and walks out of the store calmly. I don't think Sam realizes how people can be attached to their characters they made, and that giving them up would mean passing the rights of their creation to that new player. The next week comes by, and one of Sam's players that I played with proceeds to tell me that I dodged a bullet. I need to be honest, this guy seemed pretty over something that happened with him and Sam, so I don't fully believe what he told me. This is another thing. Take things, if they seem off, with a grain of salt. He told me that Sam was arguing with other people over a rules dispute, which ended in Sam having a meltdown. People started walking out, but Sam tried to prevent this by standing in front of the driveway so no one could drive off. They were being held there for a few hours until they were able to convince Sam that they were going to call the authorities. From what I heard, the guy who told me this story had a record of being a problem as well. This was short, but not so sweet. OP's writing was a little tough to follow at times, so just to clarify for anyone confused, Sam decided to move the game from the local store to his home, which was too far for OP to travel, and so seemingly the new player was brought in as their replacement. So far, no problems. As was stated in the story, things come up and availability changes, and traveling 2 hours each way just to play a game each week may be a bit much for some people. The problem here is that Sam felt entitled to OP's character sheet. Now, I understand if the new player was new to tabletop RPGs as a whole, but that does not mean that someone else who's bowing out of the game has to hand over their character sheet. Creating a character can be a very involved process, and many people are highly invested and grow attachments to their creations. Even if that's not the case though, it belongs to the player, not the DM, and if they don't want to give it up, they don't have to. If Sam was worried that character creation would slow things down or be too difficult for the newbie, then what he should have done was created a character himself to give to that player, or sat down together and gone through the process so that the newbie can learn for future games. That's what I would do anyway, instead of sulking after being told that, no, this is mine, you can't have it, I'm sorry. Then we come to the stinger of the story regarding the meltdown, which, as OP suggested, I will take with a grain of salt because it was a third-party account. But, if true, between that and the character sheet incident, it would lead me to believe that Sam is a very entitled person who's used to getting his way, and when he doesn't, behaves like a passive-aggressive child until he does. Which, gaming aside, is a quick way to ensure that your list of friends is a very short one. We'll see if this trend continues as we move on to part 2 of the story, titled The Return of Sam. I have talked about Sam before, just a second ago actually. But there's a link to that story and this story down in the description below. Sam was fine after he moved back to playing in the store. He didn't DM as much, and if he did, he would play with other players. We didn't really talk much, and if we were sitting at the same table, we would also make peace with each other. The person who told me about Sam's meltdown eventually stopped showing up, and Sam never made any mention of him either. I thought past drama was finally over. I was wrong. One day, a brand new DM shows up. He's around the age of 15 to 16 and invites people to play in a one-shot that he created. Josh tells everyone that he is new to DMing. I joined the table to help Josh since he was also asking for feedback when the first session was over. We sit down and Sam joins us. The one-shot dealt with a band of marauders flying around on insects and stealing all the food from various farms. As adventurers, it's our job to find the source of this infestation and put a stop to it. Josh sends out a horde of goblins riding giant wasps that imply they're behind the attacks. The problem? There were too many for a level 1 party to deal with. I think Josh thought we could handle this encounter, but not everyone has a bow they can shoot with, and the goblins could fly up to avoid melee. As you probably guessed, it was a TPK. Josh wasn't too happy about this, and apologized to everyone and said he felt horrible for how this encounter went. We all understood and offered advice to Josh except for Sam, who was enraged. He tells Josh that he is a horrible DM. We explain that Josh is new and that mistakes like this can happen when someone is learning. Sam makes it a mission to antagonize Josh as he says he wouldn't make this kind of mistake as a new DM and how he probably didn't even read the stat block. I call out Sam on this and tell him that he is an asshole. Sam doubles down and continues to list Josh's flaws in a toxic manner which turns into an argument at the table. Josh grabs his things and leaves silently while Joe, another player, is so upset that he stands up and approaches Sam with the intent to harm. We all tell Joe to sit down, saying that it wasn't worth it, but Joe wanted to beat the shit out of Sam. The owner quickly stops things from escalating any further. He tells Joe to sit back down, threatening to ban him permanently if he assaulted anyone and demanded an explanation. Afterwards, Sam is pulled to a corner of the store and we can only assume that the owner is scolding him. Afterwards, Sam comes back to the table and grabs his things. He comes back next week, but is more quiet when he does so. Sadly, Josh never returned, so I couldn't give him any constructive criticism. If Sam does anything else like this, I'll be sure to give another update, but I'm hoping this will be the last part. TLDR, Sam is fine for a while, but when an inexperienced DM returns, he berates them for making mistakes until they leave the store. He gets scolded by everyone, including the store owner. Between this and the first part of the story, I feel like I have a much better idea of exactly what kind of person Sam is. That being a bully who either shifts blame or picks on others in order to make himself look better. In my opinion, he tried to bully OP in Story 1 in order to get the character sheet, and in this story, he bullied Josh for having the audacity to try his hand at DMing for the first time, something that can be a monumental undertaking for a beginner. And it's not like Josh was talking up the game or claimed to be God's gift to tabletop RPGs. He made it clear up front that this was a test one-shot and he was looking for feedback in order to learn how to become a better DM. So was the game perfect? No, far from it. But really, making balanced encounters is one of the hardest things that a DM initially has to learn, and I don't really fault him for underestimating the power of flight at early levels like that. So, my opinions aside, the way that Sam reacted was blown way out of proportion, and it sounds like it may have scared poor Josh away from the hobby for good, which is a damn shame. And him claiming that he never made those kinds of mistakes as a beginner just to make Josh feel even worse are complete crap. Let's be real. I don't care how masterful a DM you may or may not be, everyone struggles in the beginning. Now, some people may be more natural at it than others, but there's a learning curve there for everyone, even if it's a small one. Now, despite how terrible Sam's treatment of Josh was though, I will say that Joe should not have tried to engage him physically. Attacking him would have only escalated the situation into even worse territory. So it's a good thing that this all occurred in a store so that the owner was able to step in and not only calm Joe down, but give Sam a talking to. This kind of unhelpful toxic criticism isn't good for business or the hobby as a whole, and too much of this kind of behavior gives the game a bad reputation, which in turn will make new players or potential DMs think twice before rolling that dice. Time will tell if these lessons have sunk in or not, and we'll see if Sam ends up raising his head again in one of these stories. But in the meantime, thanks for checking out my video and sticking around till the end. I upload new content every Tuesday and Friday, so make sure you check out my channel for more D&D stories. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave me a goosebump in the comments below. Your feedback and support is greatly appreciated. But until next time, be good players.